and welcome everyone to the Poker Fuse podcast. It is February 21st, 2019, episode 5. I'm your host, Mike Gentili, along here with my co-host, Nick Jones. Nick, how are you doing today?
I am doing terribly, Mike. Would you like to know why I'm doing terribly?
Tell me why.
It's because we just recorded the podcast and it was an amazing cut. It was just fantastic. And then
it was our best ever, right?
Best ever. And someone had some technical problems on one end, didn't they?
Yeah, I don't know who the hell could have been, but needless to say, we should be better the second time around because it'll be polished.
Always better the second time around.
So what did we talk about in the intro last time?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think we talked about how it'd only been 5 days since we recorded the last podcast, but it feels like it's been a pretty busy 5 days.
It has been. We're going to cover some things that we've covered in previous podcasts, but there's also some new topics to discuss as well. I think one other thing we talked about in the intro was we are now adding the date to the beginning of the podcast. Of course.
Did you do it again this time? Did you say the date?
I did, I'm pretty sure. Yes, I did. I did.
Okay, excellent. So we have the date. That's an exciting development in the Poker Fuse podcast. We're recording two audio streams, so that's very exciting. We're going to talk a lot about streaming as well. That's also very exciting.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of talk about streaming, and I think that now that we're a little bit practiced in pronouncing some of the names, that might go smoother.
We'll see. Let's jump into it.
All right.
Streaming poker on Twitch. If those words mean nothing to you, I'm going to give you a very quick 20-second blitz of what that would mean. And I'm
timing you since we're on 30 minutes, right?
Okay, yeah. Okay, ready, steady, go. If you can imagine someone playing computer games and you watch them play computer games and they might have a webcam and you can chat to them, that is watching live streaming. If that idea sounds bizarre to you, you're not alone, but hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people enjoy exactly that every single day. Mostly people are playing video games, and some people get tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of concurrent watchers on their streams playing these games. People turn into online celebrities and stars. It's a massive thing. So online poker operators just think it's a very, very good idea to encourage people to play online poker on their streams, because that obviously reaches a whole new demographic. How's my time looking?
I wasn't timing it.
But broadly speaking, that is Twitch streaming. Almost everything that everyone's been talking about in the last 2 weeks, everyone wants us to be talking about in the last 2 weeks, has been about Twitch streaming. Is that right, Mike?
That is correct. There's been a flurry of news around poker ambassadors or brand ambassadors for the poker companies, and it just so happens that a lot of the ambassadors, both coming and going, have been Twitch streamers.
Yeah. So here are the main highlights that I'm going to try and rattle through, and hopefully I don't butcher anybody's names or get any details too wrong. But about 2 weeks ago, PokerStars said goodbye to 3 ambassadors. All of them were pretty prominent Twitch streamers. We had Jamie Staples, Jeff Gross, and then finally Kevin Martin. Yeah, I'm good so far. Yeah. Soon after that, Party Poker announced a new Team Online brand of ambassadors who would be streaming their action on Twitch. They didn't announce any of the 3 people who left PokerStars. However, many of the 4 that they've announced so far, and they're announcing 1 a day, so by the time you listen to this, there may be 5 or more that they've announced, do have ties back. Perhaps the most prominent and the first one they announced is Matt Staples, Jamie's brother. And if you follow either of them at all, you'll know that the two of them rose to quite a lot of prominence last year with the Ultimate Sweat prop bet, which they ran, which PokerStars kind of supported quite a lot through their blog and through video production. On top of that, Party Poker is invested in Bill Perkins' Thirst Lounge, which is a Twitch TV channel. We have also seen from other operators, I think 2 ambassadors have said goodbye at Unibet, and we think that Tonka, whose real name is Mike
Parker
Talbot, has been on hiatus from streaming and may also have left his ambassadorship at 888, but that's unconfirmed.
Did I see that he was streaming on Run It Once recently?
Oh, you might be right. I do know that when they first announced his, because Tonka was a very big streamer before the 888 signing. And he did stream across multiple sites at the same time. And part of his agreement was that he could continue to do that. So if he was streaming Run It Once, it might not mean that therefore he's definitely not, still with 888. But it seems to be that his branding has been removed from like his profiles and stuff. So it would seem to indicate there's a bit of a change up there. So yeah, that's everything that's happened in Twitch streaming in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, so I think we need to pull back a bit and put this into perspective. So first of all, we have seen a lot of ambassadors let go, but I contend that doesn't mean very much. That is not a significant occurrence in the online poker world, simply because this time of year, every year, it feels like we're seeing the same kind of turnovers. Like contracts expire at the beginning of the year. I think if you look back to last year, there were quite a few very high-profile ambassadors that left. So this, to me, is not anything more than coincidental, I guess, that they are Twitch streamers. And I think that we're seeing that because as the industry as a whole gets more exposed to Twitch streaming, it only makes sense that more ambassadors are Twitch streamers. And therefore, much of the turnover will be, whether hirings or firings, is involving ambassadors that are Twitch streamers.
Yeah, and it's important to point out that PokerStars still have some big name kind of streamers on their roster. Jason Somerville still, being perhaps the granddaddy of the poker Twitch stream. He's still there, and in fact, it was only 5 or 6 months ago that PokerStars announced a big investment with his Run It Up company to build out the studio that he has in Las Vegas, which job is kind of an incubator for live streamers to bring them in, improve their kind of production values, monetization, that kind of thing, and help them with scheduling and programming and all of that. And so they're still very much invested in that. And as you say, like when you have like 8 or 9 ambassadors on your roster, when you ultimately say goodbye to some, there's an increased chance that some of them are Twitch streamers.
Yeah, and I think that part of the reason that we may also see a higher turnover rate when it comes to Twitch streamers. So I look at it from an operator's perspective. There's 2 groups of people that they hope to reach when signing a Twitch streamer. Their existing followers and the people that they may bring in as new followers. As they are exposed to their existing followers, the formula kind of switches and they become more interested in how many new followers a Twitch streamer can bring. And sometimes the economics may not make sense there, or sometimes they've reached their full utility as far as reaching their existing followers, and it only makes sense to bring in a new Twitch streamer and try and access their followers.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So we should talk a bit more about what Party Poker are doing, because they're so there's their new Team Online brand they've announced 4 ambassadors so far. Along with Matt Staples, they the second ambassador they signed up was a guy whose screen name is All In Pav, and that his backstory there is very, very interesting because I think it was about 4 or 5 months ago, PokerStars in tandem with Jason Somerville and Run It Up ran a kind of talent scout competition to find the next big poker streamer. All In Pav was a finalist and ultimately won that competition.
He pulled down that $30,000 platinum pass.
Right, so he wins the platinum pass. He goes to the Bahamas. Great story amongst all the hundreds of great stories that were made there. Obviously didn't cash from what I understand. And Party Poker kind of whether swoops in and scoops him up, or picks him up because PokerStars decided that he wasn't the right fit. You never know with these things. With all the ambassadors who have gone, is there some background negotiations, or is it the case that it was more PokerStars who felt that the value wasn't there, and now Party Poker is kind of picking up that story and making them the place for streamers just out of kind of opportunism. We don't really know, but it's fascinating to see from the sidelines.
Yeah, and just to backtrack on the comment that I made earlier, I used the term hiring and firing. I did not mean to imply that anybody was fired. In most likely situation, what happened was that they just couldn't come to terms on a contract extension.
Yeah, and to expand on that, I think what's quite interesting when you were talking about the value that the operators get from Twitch streamers. So you say there's one is reaching new potential customers and bringing online poker to the next generation of players. And I definitely think for PokerStars, that's obviously what they're trying to do with Twitch. That's what they've been trying to do for a few years now. And I wouldn't be surprised if they are, looking at the concrete numbers and working out from an ROI perspective whether they reach new players, because it's by far the largest online poker operator, and you can see it through all the decisions they make in the company, the investment they put into their product development, the reductions they make in their rewards, the decisions they make with Rake. They're all trying to do it to reach a new demographic and a new player base.
I recently sat down with Eric Holreiser, the head of marketing for PokerStars, and Jason Somerville to discuss the advancements in live streaming over the past year or so. And we did talk a bit about how they can track the people that are watching the live stream and whether or not those players are actually playing or signing up for new accounts. So that's obviously they did not share those metrics with me, but that is something that they can and do track.
Yeah, and that's obviously a big question that a lot of people who enjoy watching somebody play, would they actually become an active player themselves? And so that's definitely, I'm sure, a topic that PokerStars is exploring. However, with Party Poker, of course, they want to see that, but they also just have the much more near-term goal of introducing their product to existing online poker players who maybe only play on PokerStars or 888. And that obviously that underpins a lot of what Party Poker is doing in the sense of their big rewards program, hiring all these ambassadors, hiring big name pros as well, and they're just trying to kind of poach players, not just from PokerStars, but from 888 is seen a big loss from that, and that can be absolutely the right business decision for them, and it can be the right business decision for Party Poker to lose some of those lower value customers. And so in the microcosm of streaming, we might see that a streamer that is not hitting the metrics the PokerStars want in terms of reaching new demographics might be exactly the kind of person that the Party Poker wants, in the sense that they have the followers, and these followers have been watching their favorite streamers play on PokerStars for a couple of years, and now they get to see them play on Party Poker, and hey, our rewards are better, and we have big tournaments as well, and that kind of thing.
Right. And for that reason, I expect that we might see a bit of a live streaming carousel effect, if you will, as streamers build up a following on one site, and
we're going to coin that. We're coining that now. The live streaming carousel. You heard it here first.
Okay. But yeah, I think what Party is doing right now is, you're right. It definitely fits what they are trying to achieve, and they are trying to endear themselves to the poker community more so than PokerStars, who appears to be trying to look at recreational players and trying to reach broader audiences. One of the big developments we saw this week was that the Senate in the Netherlands passed the online gaming bill. And I believe that was the final step before it became law. Is that right, Nick?
Yes, finally. It's been a journey that it spanned 7 or 8 years, I think. 2.5 years ago, it passed the lower house, and then finally on Tuesday this week, it passed the Senate, and I believe that is the last real procedural step required. I'm not sure if it requires a signature, but that seems to be there seems to be no other stumbling blocks for it to become law. There's still the question of the regulations themselves that have to be drafted, so the timeline here is still elongated, I guess. It's still pretty stretched out. I think the best bets are the licensing process opening in mid-2020, so we're looking 18 months away. But yes, it was a great day for Dutch players and European online gambling regulators.
All right, so without rehashing everything about the legislative process of the Netherlands, I have 2 questions for you. I'll start with the first one, which is a pretty broad question, is what is a regulated market in the Netherlands going to look like? Are they going to be sharing liquidity? What are some of the highlights there?
Yeah, so hopefully, open liquidity pools. to my knowledge, we don't know yet. The regulations haven't been drafted, so I think it's only based on the signals that you get. But I think with Sweden opening their licensing system this year, it's been very successful in terms of the number of operators who've applied for licenses. When we get the first reports out, we'll get an idea of the channelization rate. But all signs pointing to be very successful, and obviously they have open liquidity. So I think that's a very good signal, if more are needed, that that's the right model to take. So I haven't heard or read any suggestions that they're going to go another direction, like a closed liquidity pool, or maybe, I know a couple of years ago there was discussions about they might be a candidate to join like the Southern European player pool, but that would be pretty surprising in my mind. So we know it's that the tax rate is high. It's 29% of gross gaming revenue, which is the top end of the range that we see in Europe. It's higher than Spain, it's higher than Italy, it's higher than Denmark, it's higher than Sweden.
And where is France again? Because they're near the top as well.
Yeah, so France is still higher. France is a bit odd in that their tax rate is 2% of all cash game, of all pots, even when you don't collect rake. So I think it works out the equivalent, depending on how the poker room structures their cash games, at something like 42%. But it's why I think we see operators push tournaments so hard in that market, is because the tax is a bit more reasonable. So it's going to be at the top end, but that has not dampened, I would say, the excitement in the industry for this market opening, which goes to show that you can still make profit there. It's a very interesting market in the sense of it is a big opportunity for all operators to grow their presence, because until now all the kind of legit operators have been, as we would have talked about last week, towing this line of not having Dutch language websites, not having a .nl domain name, not marketing to Dutch customers at all. They don't have apps in the App Store. They don't use the major payment processor in the country anymore, which is a big deal. In a lot of these countries, they have localized payment systems which everyone use for everything about their daily lives. And once they can connect into that, I believe this is the ideal system, which I don't have first-hand knowledge of, but I know in some Scandinavian countries they have their own kind of localized system that's directly run by the banks themselves, that is very fast payment process. So once they've got all that, that's a big opportunity for everyone to grow their market share. So we're seeing a lot of excitement. We're seeing a lot of the executives talking in their full year results about the opportunities in the market. So yeah, all signs point to all the major operators I would expect to have an online poker presence in the country.
Gotcha. So I do have another question, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer it. Last week we talked a lot about the differentiation between illegal operators and those that are still offering games in the country, but towing the line, so to speak, of the regulator with those three criteria that you just outlined. My question is, in following the live stream of the Senate hearing again from Gaming in Holland, I saw that they did not specifically define what an illegal operator is. I know that there's talk and there's hope that it's going to coordinate with what the regulator had put out recently. But I guess my question is, when do we expect to get that official definition?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. We might not. It might come down to the license application itself and when their suitability is considered. I'm not sure if it's going to be enshrined in a more clear fashion in the regulations. It may be, but it may not.
Okay.
It does. I mean, it seems to be this definition of active online poker operators, and that seems to be if you're actively targeting the market, which is basically if you fall foul of those three criteria that I outlined. So we've seen, Kindred Group talked about this extensively this week or last week on their investors call. They said they were very confident that they would not fall foul. Also, something else that should be considered is on Tuesday there was a vote for an amendment that the cooling off period for illegal operators be 5 years, and that was voted down, but the 2 year was accepted. So that's what we're looking at for operators considered to be active. Now, what's interesting is I chimed in.
Just to clarify, that cooling off period is for those that fall afoul of the regulator's guidelines,
yes.
Correct? Okay.
Yeah, exactly that. And so we Betson had their full year, and Betson run on Poker Perspective. They run 4 or 5 or maybe 6 skins on MPN. They are a large chunk of the MPN's International Online Poker Network. Betson, BetSafe, Trio Bet, I think, is still live. Nordic Bet is another one. So they're big in the Scandinavian countries, and they have a big presence in Holland, I believe. And on their investors call, they said, our interpretation is kind of any active customer, and we basically implied that they would be considered active, and they would face a 2-year cooling off period. And they specifically said it's not a blackout, it's a cooling off period, and they kind of said all active operators would. But when I dug around a bit, Betson were fined by the Dutch gambling authority for actively targeting the market, and so it might just be their interpretation because they know that they have specifically been sanctioned in the past for their activity. So we might see, I'm not familiar with any of the big operators, obviously not the Stars Group, I don't believe 888, Party Poker would. There have been iPoker skins, I believe, who have some Playtech customers have, so there may be some impact there. So that definitely still has to shake out a bit. Recording this podcast, we got the press release about the World Series of Poker, and they finally revealed their online bracelet events.
Yeah, there's going to be 10 gold bracelet events. Is that correct?
I think 9.
9? So 9 gold bracelet events, 10 events total, 10 online events total, and 9 of them will be gold bracelet events. They have not determined whether or not players in New Jersey will be eligible to play in those events. I think a lot of that is going to be dependent on what happens in the broader legal landscape here in the U.S. with the DOJ having reissued its opinion on the Wire Act. That's going to have a big impact on whether or not they are allowed to accept play from New Jersey.
Yeah, so it's interesting that they explicitly say in this press release, just reading that out, eligibility for New Jersey players in WSOP.com online gold bracelet events has yet to be determined. So at least they're kind of addressing that fact. I find it interesting that obviously 9 bracelet events is... Did they have 5 last year? I think it went 4 then 5.
It was 4 last year. And part of the criticism or part of the opportunity for improvement with the online events from last year is they seem to be a bit bunched together near the end of the schedule. And I think part of their objective this year was to try and spread those out a bit more and give players that are there throughout the entire series an opportunity to maybe experience one of these online events.
Yeah, so it says that they are running one bracelet event every Sunday from the start of the World Series on June 2nd all the way through to July the 14th. And then there's going to be 1 or 2, I think 2 on a couple of Wednesdays in between there. So yeah, spread out across the whole kind of 6+ week period, which is cool. Do you find it surprising that, being that it's undetermined about New Jersey players playing, that they're still so aggressive in, more than doubling the number of gold bracelet events they have? That seems like a real bold move.
Yeah, I am a bit surprised. I guess they had these planned prior to the DOJ coming out with their opinion in January, so that, I guess, makes it less surprising. But they don't seem to be hesitating at all when it comes to these online events. If it turns out that New Jersey players cannot participate, then I think that the online events may not be as obviously populated as they normally would otherwise. But I think the thing to look at, and I have not checked out that press release, is do they have any guarantees associated with these events?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I'm actually just scanning now, and
because last year I can tell you they had 4 online bracelet events, 3 of which did have guarantees, and they all easily surpassed those guarantees.
So I'm not seeing any guarantees posted, so that might be something they obviously hold back until the landscape kind of clarifies a bit. That would obviously make sense.
Yeah, and what we expect is, so when the DOJ came out with their opinion, they did give a 90-day window for people to fall into compliance. And that 90-day window puts us somewhere in April. So we should at least have some kind of clarification from the Department of Justice on what they consider to be running afoul of the Wire Act under their new opinion.
Yeah, it's actually, they got some interesting stats here in this PR. So there have been 9 online bracelet events thus far in history. So presumably that was 4 last year, and then 3, and then 2.
I think may have been 2, 1, 1.
Okay, yeah, and in those 9 events, they have awarded $10,236 in prize money.
Wow, that seems like a lot.
Yeah, it does. And obviously only 1 year was with New Jersey connected. Right. So it shows that they can get the turnout regardless. And obviously they have that outstanding issue that I think we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that there are some New Jersey players who already hold seats to play these events. So potentially they will either have to be swapped out for an event they can play, or maybe they'll even be flown to Nevada to play the event. But
yeah, I'm sure the terms and conditions cover things that may come up. So the
acts of God, basically, aren't they?
Yeah, something like that. I'm sure it's outlined how they need to handle it. But I do want to ask you a question. While you have that press release open, are all of these online events going to be no limit hold'em, or are they maybe going the way of some Omaha here?
They have a 6 max PLO, $600 buy-in on June the 9th. That's the only one. They have a knockout bounty, a turbo, a double stack, a high roller, and a summer saver to finish. So just one PLO event in the 9 bracelets.
Well, it sounds like they are doing some experimenting, doing some different things with the formats of the events.
Do you think we will hear people say that this is diluting the value of bracelet events if they're giving away 9 to perhaps slightly less prestigious events?
Well, yeah, I think that's the song that a lot of people have been singing, not only about online events, but about the live events as well. And again, I'll throw another question at you while you have the press release open, is what's the buy-ins for these events?
Yeah, so it ranges from $400 for the first one, all the way up to the high roller is $3,200.
Yeah, because I think $400 was the bottom of the range last year as well. So you can look at it and say, wow, there's a bracelet happening for a $400 event. But I believe in the live events as well, there's what was it, Colossus? No, there are some lower value
Monster Stack.
Yeah, look at us.
We're showing our lack of WSOP knowledge here.
That's for sure. But I can tell you that I do know that there were sub $500 live bracelet events on the schedule.
I'll tell you what, Mike, we need to get back on talking about online poker and less this live stuff, because we're sinking deeper.
All right, sounds good. Getting back to online poker, one of the big things that we saw this week was coming out of Asia with GG Network mimicking the rewards distribution mechanism that was recently introduced by Run It Once Poker. So Run It Once came out, and instead of having players redeem their rewards in a traditional manner, they came out with something called Splash the Pot. Splash the Pot was taking these reward monies and just dumping them into a pot pre-flop and having players play the hand and the winner getting the rewards. Well, GG Network, within a matter of weeks, took that idea and iterated on it. And now they have released their version called Cash Drops.
Yeah, that's just props for the fast turnaround in development, if nothing else. I mean, maybe they had some kind of mechanism already. So we said before, even before Splash the Pots, like sites have run some similar mechanisms to this before for promotional periods. So maybe they already had it, because otherwise that's breathtakingly fast development, agile development work there. Yeah.
So we have seen online poker rooms add money to the pot, as Nick was just mentioning. Probably the most prominent is PokerStars celebrating the dealing of their 1 billionth hand online. So they added, how much was it that they add in total to that 1 billionth hand? Do you know off the top of your head?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
Lots
yeah,
of money.
It was lots and lots and lots of money. So that was, those type of milestone hands have been a way that online poker operators have been adding money to the tables directly for a while.
And so that's actually an interesting point to bring up, because, as I understand it, with GG Network's implementation, so with Splash the Pot, the money's added to the pot and you compete over it. With the milestone hands you were talking about, that was always just distributed to the winner of the hand, and maybe some of the other people got like 10% or something like that. I think with GG Network they have a more nuanced thing where smaller splashes you play for, but the bigger ones are distributed to all players. Is that right?
Yeah, so with GG Network, they had their range of the cash drops is from 5 big blinds up to 500 big blinds. Now, when Run It Once came out, their high end went all the way up to 1,000 big blinds. And some of the feedback that players were giving after they experienced some of these big drops were, wow, this really changes the strategy of the hand. So I remember seeing one post in particular where a player had built up a couple hundred big blind stack, and then this big Splash the Pot came out, and the correct strategic move there was to push all in, and he had taken such a long time to build up his stack, it felt a little deflating for him to just gamble it all up on this one hand because so much was added to the pot.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, isn't it? That you know, if a 100 big blind buy-in, which is the mandatory minimum and maximum run it once, that's quite a lot of money to some people that they're sitting with. And so when these big splashes come along, it's very exciting, but of course you all have to go all in, and your odds of winning the pot are going to be slim a lot of the time. Right. And so GG Network's implementation with these big ones, you don't have to go all in. It's actually just distributed to all players at the table.
Right. The big $500 big blind cash drops will be distributed evenly to the players sitting at the table.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that they've done is that's quite distinct is obviously with Run It Once, this is their rewards program. This makes up the core of how all players get rewarded across all tables. For GG Network, this is a specific table, specific just for this. It's a correct me if I'm wrong.
Only. Yeah.
So it's a derivation of their game called Chinese Rush, I think, which is fast fold tables dealt in Chinese yuan currency, or is it yen currency? I can't remember now. Which is odd because most of the tables are in dollars, and you sit at this table and your dollars convert to the currency, and then they convert back as you get up. And they're fast fold tables, and they only released them like 3 months ago or 4 months ago or something like that. And now they've created another version of these fast fold tables, exactly the same, set in the Chinese currency, but with the what do they call Splash the Pot? Sorry.
They call it cash drops.
Cash drops with this cash drop added on. So it's kind of a bit more like those old school bad beat jackpot tables that you would sit on if you wanted to play and compete for the bad beat jackpot. These are tables you have to go and sit on and presumably pay a bit more rake for to be able to get these extra rewards.
Yeah, they haven't specified the amount of rake that are being taken out of the pots at these tables, which are called Rush and Cash, by the way. So they haven't told us how much rake is coming out, but what they have told us is the amount of rake back equivalent that these cash drops will be equal to, and that is 65% rake back, which differs from Splash the Pot and Run It Once, where the rake back there is based on 51%. All right, well, that puts an end to episode 5. I think that from our own perspective, we probably exposed some of the things that we're less knowledgeable on, but I think the discussion was pretty good overall. Nick, no?
I don't know, Mike. Do you not want to record it a third time?
Let's give it a shot, because I think that there may be some things that we left out. Anyway, if we recorded it or not, I guess you'll never know, because you're just going to be hearing this outro. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Provide feedback if you can. And until next time, I'm Mike Gentili. This is Nick Jones. See you at the tables.